Welcome to BodyChat, a place where we can be real about our body issues and let it all hang out, and where we bring on fantastic guests. I'm Hillary Wells, here with Dr. Pam Denton. We are the founders of SuperCORE Fit and the authors of Core Intelligence. And we have here with us today River Plumb. I'm so excited to have River here. He is such a shining light, and I have been privileged to meet him recently. And River is a black belt and 3 NGT NIA white belt trainer, which means that he is going to be training NIA teachers, and we're really excited to have him on board for that. And River really considers himself let's make sure I get this right, River, a body and lifestyle curator. So he uses the tools of movement, of NIA, and also of tarot. I never know if it's tarot or tarot, so I think you could say it either way, and astrology to curate coaching sessions for clients. So really excited to have River here today to talk about some of his experience with his own body issues, and also coming from a family of personal trainers and being a personal trainer himself before he found NIA. So River, there's a lot in this subject. Why don't you start with telling us a little bit about growing up in a family where both of your parents were personal trainers?
That's amazing.
Pressure.
Well, thank you for having me on. I'm so grateful to be here. And that is a great question to start with, as that was my earliest introduction to fitness was through my family. My mom and dad met at a gym playing racquetball. My dad's a personal trainer to this day, semi-professional soccer player. My brother's a personal trainer. My stepmom teaches aerobics. And so I grew up around the health and wellness boom of the 1990s. And at that time, I had a chronic pain and injury from my neck. And I was very disconnected from my body. So I felt like the black sheep in the family. I was out of shape. I was in chronic pain. And it's ironic when I look back now, and yet I see the breadcrumbs leading me to NIA through that experience. But exercise was always viewed as a punishment, right? So if I get in trouble, it's go run laps or do push-ups. And so I really had to reclaim what it meant to be in my body, to be connected through the joy of movement, and find health and wellness that worked for me.
Wow. So exercise as punishment. That's
a good one.
It's kind of like the army, I guess, drop and give me 50 or something. So it sounds like maybe a negative relationship with exercise growing up.
Very much so. My body felt like a prison most of my early life. And it really wasn't until I discovered yoga in high school, as well as running by myself, running down the street, and reclaiming a sense of personal power is really what I found through yoga and through running. For the first time, I sensed success in my body. And that was a very new sensation. It was something that my family couldn't give to me. I really had to uncover it for myself.
I love that. I so relate to that. I had imprisonment in my body too, and found freedom through carving my path with running and walking for long hours. And then with yoga was a big one for me. And it was almost like what you're saying, River, bringing that success forwards. What's your successful technique that you use in your life? And I tell people that all the time as a fitness leader, like find the teacher and the class that you can relate to and find that success in your body. Let's dive into that. What does success in your body feel like for the people out there who have no clue?
It's definitely a big topic. The sensation for me of success is this desire being fulfilled. So there's a fulfillment of desire. For me, the desire was to feel comfortable, to move, to have permission to move. And that success continued every time I ran to the end of the stop sign and back, and then maybe 50 more yards further each day. There was a sensation of, I can do this. And that sensation then led me to experimenting with other forms of movement. And it finally, built up to give me confidence to take the personal training certification and then move into that realm as an authority on fitness. And so it was a very slow build. It started my junior year. I'll never forget. Saturn went over my ascendant, and Saturn is the planet of discipline and self-autonomy and authority. And looking back, I see how that success was sensed as authority. In Nia, we talk about the hara, our center of gravity, and that really is what success feels like in my body. It's deep in my belly. It is a knowing and a trusting of my body.
Wow, River, that's so beautiful. I love it. And that fact that you were able to get yourself to start that first run, that's really what it takes sometimes. And I want to talk a little bit more, just very briefly, about Nia in case people are watching this who don't know what Nia is. Would you describe what Nia is for you, just as we're referencing it in this conversation?
Yes, to me, Nia has been the most accessible route to body, mind, emotion, spirit in terms of a holistic practice for body and life. And so Nia is really a celebration of joy in the body, joy being our birthright. And when we define the word joy, we're really talking about something much more than personal enjoyment, which is fabulous. We love personal enjoyment, but joy as a universal force in life. It moves the sun across the sky. It makes the plants grow. It's what feeds our body. It's what keeps our heart beating while we're asleep, is that joy. And through Nia, we can tap into that using music, movement, and the magic of being in community.
Beautifully
Wow.
said, River. I'm going to keep this recording so I can just, if anybody asks me what Nia is, I'm also, if you don't know me, I'm also a black belt Nia instructor, as well as a SuperCORE instructor. And that joy, River, in SuperCORE, we talk about it as universal life force energy. That's really, it's that universal joy, that feeling of being alive. And so when we don't have that in our body, all kinds of things can go wrong and do go wrong. And I'm wondering how it was for you as a male, not being the black sheep for not being the exerciser and not being in shape, and being a male. Like, how was that specifically? I feel like for a woman, it might not be as extreme as, like, men are supposed to be what? Strong, bulky, in shape, whatever those stereotypes are we were talking about last week with Amy Bliss. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Certainly. So the gym environment that I grew up in was very much bodybuilder centric. So I see these massive, I'm sure, here I am, this little kid, see, this is my image of what a man should look like, is this hyper muscled, extreme version of masculinity, and not fitting that mold at all. I have very long arms. I'm very lanky. My natural body type is tends to be more long and more lean, and so it was very challenging growing up in that environment, being overweight and in a family that really valued aesthetic of the body, and so there was lots of themes of body dysmorphia in my childhood. Nothing diagnosable, but certainly themes and cycles that I went through. I lost 50 pounds between my sophomore year and junior year in high school. And that was partly due to the running, but also partly due to not eating as much. And that bordered on anorexic behavior at times as well. And so seeing that in my family and unpacking that has been a major journey, especially over the last, I would say, 3 years. I've consciously put on 30 pounds, and it was a process of healing these old wounds that I had around food and around ideal body type. And it's been definitely a journey, and it's still unfolding.
Yeah, I think once you step onto that path, I can so relate. I feel like you're telling my story, and once you step onto that path, it's a constant journey. And what I find fascinating is how we criticize and punish ourselves for not fitting into a norm of what we should be. And then we turn the sword against ourselves instead of, not just figuring out like what you did, figure out what's your form of movement, what's your form of body, how do you embody your true self? So where does spirituality fit into that for you and for people out there who are listening to this? Because I know that there's a spiritual rhythm to you too. So how did that help you out as a tool, becoming spiritually aligned and astrologically aware?
Well, I've always been drawn down the path of spirituality. So growing up, I was always interested in meditation and other forms of intuition building and energy work. And to be honest, it was a way to escape my body at first. My body was something wrong, and I wanted to quote unquote transcend my body. And so it really was so I'll say my sophomore year in college, I took a lot of rational courses, so philosophy and psychology, and I really kind of moved away from the spirit practice that I had growing up. I've been reading tarot since I was 13, and I kind of left that all behind to, in a way, really ground myself in the physical. Whether it's physical sciences, I was taking a lot of biology and chemistry at the time, and then also grounding it in my body. I became a personal trainer. I turned my focus onto sensation. And when I discovered Nia, I realized that I'm not these separate parts, right? I'm not just a body, I'm not just a mind. Instead, it's a holistic model. And so Nia allowed me to start in the body at white belt. We call it the art of sensation. So that's where the path begins. And then it begins to unfold. Blue belt, the art of communication. Brown belt, the art of perception and working with energy. And then ultimately black belt, releasing and unleashing creativity through all four realms of body, mind, emotion, spirit. And I will say my intuition and my spiritual practices have evolved tenfold through the art of being in my body. So it's kind of come full circle to me.
I love that about Nia too, that sometimes we think of spirituality as tripping out, right? Tripping out of the body. And in Nia, we trip in. And that really, Nia taught me that too. And SuperCORE is also doing that for me in a big way. And Pam's Goddess Core program that she's started, it's so, we're channeling these energies that are so big, and we're doing it all from the point of being in the body and releasing what's in the way. Like Pam and I have both had eating disorders for most of our lives. Both of us were bulimic. We're cousins. So I don't know. We had similar family dynamics or whatever that caused that. And so, and along with it, of course, goes that body dysmorphia that you were talking about. And so being able to be comfortable in the body and coming in, what advice would you give people who are struggling with body issues, which I'm starting to think is just about everybody?
Yeah.
No kidding. My biggest advice is to recognize and understand that all of these diets and these prescriptive ways of moving, quote unquote, moving, are just theories. This is someone's theory. It's not a law. There's no ideal diet, for example. Really understanding what works for your body, that takes time. It takes time to build a relationship with the body and knowing what its needs are. And Nia, we talk about the body's way, which is the ideal when you open up a textbook and you see the ideal form. But each one of us has our own unique biology, which is how our body was made, and our own unique biography, the stories that have shaped our bodies. And that's really the place to start, is know thyself. And I cannot take credit for that quote. My mentor, Loretta Milo, is the one who shared that quote with me, the biography and biology of our bodies. And I would definitely say start with what feels good, right? Fitness should feel good. Eating should feel good. The body is coded towards pleasure. Even a single-celled organism, when exposed to a small drop of poison, is repulsed by it, and a small drop of food or nutrients, it is it is magnetized towards. So we are coded to magnetize towards pleasure and feeling good. And that to me has been the starting point. I'll never forget in my NIA white belt, the first training, my teacher said the treasure of pleasure. And that seemed like such a revelation. Pleasure was always seen as a dirty word, as a bad word. And really we are creatures of pleasure. Our bodies should be pleasurable. It should be pleasurable to inhabit the body. So my word of advice is, if you catch yourself being seduced towards a very one size fits all approach, to ask yourself, does this bring me more pleasure, more joy? Do I want to be in my body more by doing this practice or eating this food? Or does it make me want to escape or run in the other direction? The body never lies.
It does not. The nervous system never lies. It tells the truth. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and like if you eat some ice cream and it feels pleasurable in the moment, but then you're up all night with an upset tummy, well, your body's telling you something. So maybe there's that, it's also that like instantaneous pleasure versus the long-term pleasure and comfort and function of the body. So getting, and that takes time sometimes to really get that perspective, and have kind of, in NIA, we also talk about the witness and the witness that's kind of out here going, let's look at what's going on here. Let's look at the bigger picture. You can call it your higher self, your place of observing your life, self-awareness. And I think that's important too. Seeking pleasure. And what does that mean? Is it the momentary pleasure of eating ice cream, or is it the long-term pleasure of, wow, I just ate a piece of fruit and now my body feels amazing?
Right. There's superficial pleasure, and then there's deep pleasure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's sustainable pleasure. And that's really what I'm after in my body, is sustainability. I want to feel good, and I want to continue to feel better, which is how we define self-healing within NIA, is doing something, anything that allows us to arrive at feeling better. And it's so important, so important.
Feel better. Yeah. I mean, it really is so simple when it's put that way. And yet it's like, I think that, the more disconnected people are from their bodies when we're in a screen all the time, we're on our phone, we're on our computer, we're being bombarded with all kinds of images, and people just zone out. Like, I'm amazed when I've had people come to me, NIA students, and say, I just realized I have a body, like, literally. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. But I think that's really common because we get so up here in the intellect that like there's nothing below the head. And
And not only do they not realize they have a body, but they don't realize other people have bodies and spirits around them inhabiting those bodies, right? I went on a mini vacation recently, and walking in the crowd, people are so unaware of their surroundings around, people bumping into each other. There was this lack of self-awareness, which then was a lack of other awareness. And I think we see that a lot in the world today, is this lack of empathy for others. And it all starts in the body.
Oh, that is beautifully put, River. And that, that is, I think, a great place for us to jump off, since we've got to wind up here. But I love that. The body, I've always seen it that way too, that change happens from the inside out, one person at a time. And the more that we can change and have that 360-degree awareness, right, of what's around us, then we can have empathy and compassion for ourselves and for other people.
Certainly. As above, so below. As below, so above. We can really create change on a massive level by putting the microscope on ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the takeaways for me is, and for people out there who are feeling like they're so fatigued and they can't even feel what we're saying, like they can't find that morsel of joy. Let's go back to like your first statement or your first story about just taking a step. Take a step, one step, and start to be the scientist of joy, of embodying joy and being in your body and finding that pleasure. Because I think for a lot of people who are numbed out or fatigued or just feeling sick or in pain, how do you find that joy? And it starts with just one inquisitive, curious step.
Truly. That what a great way to put it. That's exactly
Yeah.
right.
All right.
Awesome. Well, let's all take a breath together. I feel like we need a big breath. Thank you so much, River. You're such a joy. And I hope we can have you on again. It feels like there's so much we could all talk about. So thanks so much for being on.
You're welcome. I'm honored to be here, and you can find out more about me on riverplumb.com
Thank you.
and my classes and courses that I have coming up as well.
And
Awesome.
River is an amazing astrologer. I have never had an astrology reading before, ever in my life. And I was gifted a reading with River for my birthday, and it was unbelievable. River, I've got to write you some stuff
It was
that's been coming up
life-changing.
for me about it. Yeah. So, I encourage everyone to book your astrology reading, tarot reading, Nia class, whatever it is with River, riverplumb.com. Thank you so much, River. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Let's stay embodied.
Yeah.